The international break is finally over, thank God, and we can turn our attention to Premier League action as our beloved Blues battle against South England side Bournemouth. But who will start, and how can we best our opponents in this match? Lads, lasses and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the lead-in. Let's go. So let's firstly set the scene and then we'll get into some predicted lineups. It's Chelsea versus Bournemouth, a fixture that doesn't have a lot of history, but in recent times has been a bit of a mixed bag for Chelsea. Last season we managed to beat them once and draw to them once, but both games were rather underwhelming performances for the Blues, one right at the start of the season and one right at the end. This fixture is the away fixture for this season, and we know that Chelsea play way better away from home, so hopefully that gives us a boost. Let's briefly touch on our opponents first. Bournemouth are currently sitting 3 places above us, 8th in the Premier League after the first 3 games of the season, winning 1 and drawing 2, remaining undefeated after that incredible comeback versus Everton last time out. However, in all competitions they have indeed faltered, losing to West Ham 1-0 in the EFL Cup in their previous game. Let's take a look at their transfer business this summer. Firstly, their outgoings, the biggest of which is of course ex-Chelsea boy Dominic Solanke, who went out for a record fee to Tottenham, but they've also lost Kiefer Moore, Lloyd Kelly to Newcastle and long-time goalkeeper Neto on a loan to Arsenal. They have used that earned revenue well though, bringing in Evan Nilsson, who looked good versus West Ham, Eris Unal, Dean Huijsen from Juventus and Araujo from Barcelona. No, not that one. Finally, they've also signed Kepa Arrizabalaga from us on a loan deal to replace Neto. Despite the lack of a top number 9, I think they've improved their side from last year. That being said, let's take a look at the possible lineup for this Bournemouth team and see what we will be up against. Firstly, let's talk absentees. The Cherries are without a few players. A big blow for them is that they are without Dango Ouattara after he's sustained an injury during international duty, as well as Tyler Adams, who is still out. Philip Billing and Eris Unal are coming back from injuries, so may or may not feature here. I'll be putting Andoni Iraola's side into the same 4-2-3-1 formation that they played versus Everton, with a few rotations in place due to injuries and signings. First up in goal is going to be a weird one. Kepa Arrizabalaga, who is their number 1, would play if we allowed him to, but I don't expect us to, so I'll be putting in backup goalie Mark Travers. The defence is going to be slightly changed, so firstly starting at right back will be new signing Julian Araujo once more. The centre-back partnership is going to change as Ilya Zabarnyi partners Dean Huijsen instead of Senesi in the right and left centre-back spots respectively. Finally, over on the left will be Hungarian Milos Kerkez. Moving into the midfield, we'll start with the 2 holding roles. As ever, this is going to be the combination of Lewis Cook on the right and Brian Christie on the left. Moving into the more advanced roles, as Ouattara is injured he won't feature on the right, so Antoine Semenyo comes back into the side. In the centre, I'm going to be putting Marcus Tavernier, and over on the left, I expect after his efforts in the late comeback versus Everton that Luis Sinisterra will start. Finally, up top in the striker role will once again be the previously mentioned Evan Nilsson, who will lead the line. That's just a brief look at what their team could look like. Perhaps we see some more rotations due to strategy though. Now let's turn our attention to Chelsea and see what our lineup for this game could be. We don't have too many absentees for this one, however both right backs in Reece James and Malo Gusto are unavailable due to injury, as are Amari Kellyman and Romeo Lavia, who all have thigh issues and most likely won't feature. Apart from that, everyone is available for this one, so I'll be putting Enzo Maresca's Chelsea team in the 4-3-3 formation once again, with a not too dissimilar 11 that we saw versus Palace last time out. Starting with the goalkeeper, I'm going to be putting in Robert Sanchez. Nothing changes here, he's our number 1 and will start once again. For the back 4, this is going to have forced change due to the right back situation, so though Axel Disasi is the obvious choice here, I'm going to be putting in youngster Josh Achempong for a stint at right back, who is on the official first team squad list for this season. Next to him in the centre back roles will be the growing partnership between Wesley Fofana and Levi Colwill, who will start at right and left centre back respectively. Finally, over on the left will of course be Mark Cucurella, who retains his place. Moving into the midfield, there's not going to be any change here unless Lavia is deemed fit enough to play, so in the deeper role will once again be Moises Caicedo, who was excellent versus Palace, with Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer playing ahead of him despite the latter recovering from an injury. Ahead of them in the attacking roles, let's start on the right. Noni Madueke will start here once again, off of the back of his very successful senior England debut, getting an assist for Harry Kane and hopefully getting some more goal involvements here. On the left, I'm going to be giving a debut for Jadon Sancho, who's been in training for weeks now and should be ready to start. Finally, up top will be Nicholas Jackson. The Senegalese will be looking to make his record 3 goals in 4 Premier League games with another notch here, so let's hope he keeps up his good form. Now, as I have been doing in these videos, let's touch on a few substitutes I'd like to see Enzo Maresca make in this game. We get to make 5 substitutes in this match as per Premier League rules. The 5 men I'd personally like to see make an appearance are Joao Felix, Christopher Nkunku, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, Renato Vega, and last but certainly not least, Pedro Neto. Apart from that, I think this is a solid team and perfectly capable of beating Bournemouth, and we'll talk about how in a little bit. But before we do, it's time for today's comment question of the day, so answer me this. Where do you predict Chelsea to finish in the league this season, and why? Let me know in the comments down below with QOTD at the start as always, and I'll heart my favourite answers. Now let's take a look at how Chelsea can navigate this game tactically and see how we can beat the Cherries in this game. Before we go any further, in case you missed it, memberships are now available on the channel. For as low as 99 pence a month, you can become a member by clicking the join button below the video and unlock access to exclusive perks such as badges, emotes, and my members only Discord where I'll be running my FPL mini league where you can compete to win prizes, as well as watch bonus videos that I can't put here on YouTube and more. I really hope to create a thriving community in the server, and the money goes directly to supporting me and the channel, so if you're interested, become a member today and join the masses. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, so here we have the team, and as usual we'll just kind of move this into what I expect them to kind of set up with in game. Obviously we're not going to say in this 4-3-3, we're going to move into a 3-4-3 of some description, and I would imagine that Josh Chempong is not going to be the one that inverts. I think that Kukurea would be the one to invert because he's more natural in that position, and we kind of see the box form with these 4 instead, with Colwell playing a bit further left. But we could see some other setups as well. Obviously we could see Disasi come into this role instead of a Chempong. We could see Tosin play in this role as well, potentially. We could also see Renato Vega maybe play in the left back role and then kind of invert, because he's done that before as well. The only issue that I kind of have with this system is the fact that it forces Colwell out so wide, and we're kind of used to him playing in this more central role. So maybe we do see Josh play kind of in the right centre mid role that we kind of saw Gusto playing in, and then we could split the centre backs to Caicedo dropping deep. We've seen that happen before. But then again, this is a bit of a weird kind of conundrum for us to be in as well, with a Chempong and Kukurea being in the midfield, so probably won't see that as much. We'll probably just stick to the standard 3 at the back, with maybe Chempong kind of pushing into this right centre mid position, Palmer going into the 10 and Enzo dropping a bit deeper is kind of what I'd imagine we might see. Or we might just completely abandon the inversion completely and just play Josh as a natural right back, or Disasi or Tosin, whoever is going to be filling in here. So for us to figure out how we can beat Bournemouth in this game, we first need to understand why we need to do certain things. So let's talk about them a little bit here, move the players in. This is the back 4 that I kind of put in here, and then we have Christie on the left and Cook in the middle. Marcus Tavernier obviously occupies this kind of 10 role, with Luis Sinisterra on the left, Semenyo on the right, and then Evan Nielsen will play in the central role. Now, I think that Andoni Iraola's Bournemouth side can be summed up in 3 words: intense, direct, and wide. And let's touch on those 3 points. So starting with the intensity of the team, this midfield area with Cook, Christie, and Tavernier, Bournemouth are one of the best teams in the entire league at not only closing players down, cutting out passes, but just tackling and winning the ball. Their metrics in things like ball recoveries, for example, are some of the highest in the division. They are so good at winning the ball in these areas, and they basically just do not give you enough time to do anything. They will outwork you, they will kind of overwhelm you if you cannot navigate this insane press and this insane ability to block your passing lanes. That's one thing which they do very well, which I kind of didn't mention there, is the fact that their positioning in these midfield roles and the way that they cut out passing lanes to strikers or to wingers at times, and even just blocking like for example this pass to another centre mid. They are so good at it, and it's why they've got the best metrics in the league last season for these types of things. And this type of defensive style in specifically this midfield third is kind of evident because of the way that Bournemouth games kind of play out. A lot of them end up being what I like to call basketball games, where they are very, very back and forth. There's a lot of turnovers, there's 50-50 possession, and it's kind of rare to see a Bournemouth performance where they have a lot of possession, but it's also very rare for them to have a game where they are completely hounded off the ball and do not gain the ball, because again, they are so good at winning it back, so good at forcing the opposition into giving them the ball back. And again, as I said, the majority of the games turn into transition, and they kind of thrive in that chaotic environment, especially because of how direct they can be. Obviously, some of the reason why they don't have as much possession is just due to the quality of the players. Let's be honest, they don't have the greatest quality players, but their tactics are very, very good, and their team play in general is better than the individual parts that they have in the team, and they can be wasteful at times, especially when they are trying to play as direct as they do, which I'll kind of touch on in a bit. So how do we beat this? How do we kind of navigate this high press style without kind of getting overwhelmed by it? Well, the first thing is we could completely bypass playing it through the midfield from long balls. Obviously, we know that Sanchez is very comfortable on the ball. His distribution from the back is very good. Colwill, again, another great pass from the back. If we can just line it straight up and play a bit more route one, obviously I've put that out to the wide area, more likely would go into Jackson. If we can get the ball over the top of this midfield and stop them from being able to actually do what they do best, and then obviously pick up loose balls if Jackson wants to knock it back, for example, to Palmer, who can come into this central role, and then we can play from there. Or Jackson, of course, you know how good Jackson is as is hold up. He could just hold the ball up and turn and try and drive towards goal himself. What we can do is we can bypass the ability for them to have as much impact in these central areas by just simply avoiding playing through those midfield areas. Obviously, that's not going to be a great game plan for the whole of the game, but that is something we can do to navigate that in terms of when we have possession in this first third and they are pressing us, because we know that they will. If we have to, we can line it, bypass the midfield, get us attacking in the opposite direction. The other thing is to create overloads or man advantages in the central area, and this is something that our team does very, very well with the way it sets up. Obviously, if we have this inversion from Cucurella, we get this 4v3 in the centre that we kind of always speak about. And even though Semenyo will obviously kind of track Cucurella and try and put pressure on him, he doesn't really want to be doing this. He wants to be kind of getting out here in this wide area and attacking the space. So hopefully we can kind of keep this man advantage here, and even if we don't do this, if he is occupied, Jackson again is another player that always can drop deep. Enzo can drop into this position, and we can get this 4 versus 3 in this position as well. So when we do play the ball forward from Jackson into these midfield areas, we'll always have the extra man. So even if they do press and they do try and cut the passing lanes, there's always going to be someone who's free to be able to pick up the ball and then play us forward from there. For example, Caicedo, who's very good at dropping deep into these positions. Cole Palmer can drop deep into those positions to pick up the ball and then play us forwards, etc, etc. Now, I spoke about earlier, the second point is that Bournemouth are very, very direct, and this kind of way that they play is very evident, and this was very evident last season because they had a lot of direct passes. They had some of the best metrics for long passes, and one of the things which is really funny is one of their stats that they actually had was they had the most amount of short passes from their goalkeepers. Their goalkeepers did not launch the ball, which in a team that now has Kepa Arrizabalaga in a goal is something we can kind of see that them possibly doing, is playing it short between the centre backs and the goalkeeper. But when the centre backs get on the ball, and especially Zabarnyi in this right hand side, they will absolutely line it. They know that if they hit this long and it goes into Evanilson, obviously they used to have Dominic Solanke here, who was very, very tall, very, very good at holding up the ball, not only by being a target man but also just being able to run in behind, and he had a lot of pace. Evanilson is, despite being a little bit less quality than Solanke at the moment, I would say, he can definitely do the same role, and they will obviously opt to do this. We saw against West Ham a lot of their play kind of went through playing it in behind for Evanilson, and he looked very, very impressive in that game, admittedly. He probably could have gotten a goal or two, and he unfortunately didn't for them. But yeah, they are very, very direct, and it always comes from these centre-backs. If we do not put pressure on these centre-backs, they will just find the balls over the top. And even if he can't hold up the ball particularly, just challenging for the ball and then us not winning the second ball, they will always try and win the second ball with someone like Tavernier, for example. If he does win the knock-on, he can obviously knock it to Tavernier to then play wide, because that's what they like to do. areas, they like to play wide, or Evan Nilsson, if he does win the ball, can knock it wide himself and then kind of get them attacking into these wide areas. And this merges very, very nicely into the third point, which I said, which is that they play really wide. Obviously, they have Sinistera on this left-hand side, who's been very, very good form recently. Semenyo, who is always a danger from these wide areas. What they like to do is get the ball wide as soon as possible and basically do what Chelsea like to do in certain terms. It's that they like to get isolated 1v1 against fullbacks. They like to take on their men. They, again, like to be very, very direct. They like to run towards the goal or run around to get to the goal. They just like to get on the ball, get dribblers, getting into these positions for not only shots but then passes, or just getting into these wider areas to put the ball across. Obviously, that's how Dominic Solanke got a lot of his goals. A lot of the talk about Bournemouth last year was how good Solanke was, but for the most part, most of their good play actually came from the wingers, actually. The Sinistera obviously wasn't playing here all the time, but it was kind of Kluivert who was playing here, who could also play central as well. Semenyo, specifically on this right-hand side, has been an underrated baller for the entire season, I would say. He's been one of the most dynamic wingers, I would say, especially in these 1v1 scenarios. And if Bournemouth are able to get these isolated 1v1s and they get the time on the ball with their wingers to drive and create danger, then that will obviously give them a lot of success in this game. How do we combat this then? What is the way that we can kind of stop them from getting the ball directly up to their centre-backs and then out wide? Well, it's not that much of an issue for us, I would say. Admittedly, our two centre-backs that we have, Colwill and Fofana, are very, very good in the air. Obviously, Sanchez, again, very, very good in the air. If they play the ball too far, Sanchez is going to claim it. If they play it into Colwill, he's so good aerially. We saw that in the Palace game, completely handling Mateta on his own pretty much. Fofana, again, another one who's tall, got very good vertical leap, he can jump and win the ball. Caicedo, we've seen, is very good aerially despite his smaller stature. We definitely have ways of combating that ball up, and not only that, but just our forward press is really, really good. We know how good our forward press is from Jackson, from Palmer especially, is very, very good at cutting the ball out. Obviously, we haven't really seen it as much from Sancho. We haven't seen Sancho play yet. Madueke is again another one who can rush at players. We've seen his work rate increase dramatically since he came into into a starting place under Maresca, so hopefully we can see that continue. And basically just not giving them the time on the ball with their centre backs to play those long passes, or even if we're not giving them enough time to play accurate passes, because obviously sometimes when we do press, they will just have to line it. If they don't line it accurately and they give the ball back to us, that's just going to give us more possession, more opportunities to score, etc. The same obviously applies if the ball goes back to the goalkeeper. Even though they don't usually play it long from the goalkeeper and they opt to pass it short to the centre backs and then go long, I think that if we can pressure the goalkeeper, it may force him into a few mistakes. We still don't know who the goalkeeper is going to be. We expect it to be Mark Travers, but if we potentially allow Kepa to play, obviously it's up to the club, the parent club, to decide that. If we let Kepa play, then I think, again, that kind of changes our tactics. And this is going to sound really horrible, but it's something we had to suffer a lot of the time. Kepa is simply not a good shot stopper. If any shot goes from outside the box here into one of the corners, it's going in. There's no way he's saving it. He's just his physical stature is just too small to stop shots from outside the box. And we've actually seen in training, a lot of our play recently has in training has been specifically shots from this area. So I wonder if there is a sneaky bit of tactics going on there to see if Kepa will be playing, if we've allowed him to play, and that might be a way we can get goals. Obviously, we need to improve our shooting from outside the box anyway, especially when we come up against teams that play low blocks. Obviously, Bournemouth are not going to be a team that plays a low block in this game, I don't think. Not for the majority of the time. Even though they can switch into a 3 at the back, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they will, for the most part, kind of expect to be able to beat us if they play their style, so I expect them to kind of play in this 4-2-3-1 still. What I will say though is that if they do get the ball out wide by some other means, if they don't play through the direct balls and they somehow manage to get the ball out, for example, out to the right back and then up to Semenyo or Sinistera on the other side, this is when danger spells for us, because we have shown recently in the few games we've played so far this season that we are vulnerable down the wings, especially on the transition, because of the way that our team team sets up. Obviously, if we are playing in this box midfield with Enzo more advanced and Palmer more advanced, and we have Cucurella here, the amount of space that the wingers now have, not only do they have more space out wide to operate in, because obviously Colwell's not going to be operating really wide, he's going to be a bit more in here, or whichever centre back this is. They've got more space to go around and then put balls into the box. Not only that, but also just the players they come up against, obviously Colwell and a Chempong or Disasi or Tosin, whoever is here, they are not great 1v1 defenders, and they're not used to having to do this all the time because they're not fullbacks, right? They're not used to defending in these positions. They're more used to playing in central roles. So they'll obviously have the advantage when we get these 1v1s, and that's obviously exactly what they want to do. They want to get the 1v1s, they want to be direct, they want to make our centre-backs uncomfortable, and if they do manage to do this, then we could see us concede, especially on the transition, as I said, because that's where we concede a lot of our goals. Obviously, Fofana and Colwell have come up with a pretty decent partnership in recent games, I would say. I think they are very, very solid against Palace. Hopefully we can see that again, but we will see moments of transition when obviously Cucurella is having to get back, and if he's not able to get back quick enough from this position, Semenyo will be able to exploit this. Obviously, Sinistero will also have a good time on the opposite side, but less so just because that he doesn't have to deal with the inversion. There's always going to be a player here for him, so I think it might make it a little bit more difficult for him. I think Semenyo is really the key player for them in this game, I think, to look out for in terms of a danger man that's going to get them goals. So we'll have to watch out for that. And in general, I just think that if Bournemouth play on the transition against us and we kind of make it that chaotic ball that they strive in and they like to have, then they're going to find a lot of success against us, hands down. They're going to be able to open us up. They're going to be able to get shots on goal, depending on how well we kind of deal with that and how well we work and how hard we work in these midfield areas to stop the transitions. That's basically going to be what determines this game in a way, is that whoever's midfield can outwork each other and actually set off the transitions first, and whoever is more clinical from those transitions, I think, is going to win this game. Ultimately, I think that we probably will be able to defend smartly, I would imagine, and be able to counteract these transitions. And I think that if any team's going to be more clinical from a transition, it will be us, because we've been doing that for the entirety of last season under Pochettino. Our whole philosophy was based on chaos ball and thriving in those moments of chaos and getting goals from it. We saw so many goals last season, and I think we'll be able to see a few more goals in this game. Apart from that, all I think that we really need to do is just play our game, because it will be successful against how open Bournemouth will play, because again, as I said, they like to play on the transition. They will leave gaps for us in behind if we do get the ball. They won't sit on their laurels and sit back into a back five and stop us from being able to make inroads. There will be opportunities for us to score, and I think we really need to do those basic principles that we've kind of spoken about in the past. We need to make these 1v1 scenarios, not only with Madueke up against Kerkez and Sancho up against Araujo, but obviously Jackson up against one of the centre-backs, and maybe even just dragging one of the centre-backs out when he drops deeper to create space for someone like Palmer. That type of thing, we need to be able to do that, and I think we will be able to do that with how aggressively that Bournemouth do defend. They like to get out and kind of stop their wingers from advancing. I think that kind of benefits us, because obviously we have very, very good 1v1 wingers. Obviously, we've seen Sancho in training look very, very sharp, the sharpest we've ever seen him since he kind of joined Manchester United, I think we would be able to say. I think he's going to be revitalised under Enzo Maresca in terms of just having a home that appreciates him and hasn't hung him out to dry immediately. I think that obviously he's going to fit in very well with the rest of the London boys, and obviously he's a boyhood Chelsea fan at heart, so he's going to fit in. Hopefully he can get his form back, because we know the talent that he does have, the flair, the ability to beat men, take them on. That's kind of what we need from our wingers. Obviously we know how good Madueke is at doing this. I think Sancho is the real question mark at the moment, because he hasn't been in the greatest form in the last couple of years. Hopefully he can regain that form and we can kind of progress. But not only just that, the 1v1 wing play is obviously important, but I think the direct passing from the centre of the centre-backs to get us into forward areas as well. We've seen against Wolves and against Palace that this can be successful at times, and if we can find the avenues, for example, if Tavernier is trying to cover this pass or whatever, and Evan Nielsen is pressing Fofana or whoever is in the central area, we can play the ball central to, for example, Palmer or to Jackson, who can drop deep, and then that can get us through the lines and playing forward and playing the way that we know that we can. The third thing is obviously just winning the ball back quickly if we do lose it. We know we're going to lose possession in this game. We're not going to have another game where we get 70% possession. We know how Bournemouth are very, very good at getting the ball back, and it doesn't matter if they do win the ball back as long as we are winning the ball back off of them after they win it. We can't just sit and accept the fact that they're going to be able to win the ball back off of us. We need to press them once they get the ball and then make it difficult for them as well. Obviously, we know how much our counter press is a part of how we defend, and hopefully we can put that to good use and kind of out Bournemouth in a way, because I think, again, this game is going to be very, very chaotic. Ultimately, this game should be favouring us, but that chaotic nature of Bournemouth's playstyle could cause us to fall away from our game plan. I suppose we'll just have to wait and see when the game happens. For a score prediction, I'm going to be predicting a victory, but an uncomfortable one for Chelsea. I'm going for a 2-1 result, with Sancho scoring on debut and Palmer netting a penalty. As for Bournemouth, their biggest threat in my eyes is Semenyo, so I expect him to net against us. We'll have to wait until the game to see if any of my predictions are correct, and as always, I'll be live streaming immediately after the game with Feeling Blue to review the match, so make sure you come through if you are able. But if you can't wait until then, YouTube reckons you'll enjoy one of these two videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues!